Have you ever felt like you're working so hard? You're praying, you're putting out good energy, but your bank account just isn't getting the message. I'm not talking about wanting to be a millionaire overnight. I'm talking about that deep, nagging feeling that you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but you're still just treading water. What if I told you the key to unlocking your own wealth isn't in your office, isn't in some new investment strategy, but it's waiting for you in your parents' dusty living room? I know, it sounds completely crazy, right? Believe me, if you had told me this a year ago, I would have laughed. I was the guy with the spreadsheets, the 5-year plan, the vision board on the wall. I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would listen to the podcasts. I would write down my goals. I was on the hustle, the grind. I was doing all the things they tell you to do to succeed. And I was praying. Oh, trust me, I was praying. I was on my knees, asking God for a breakthrough, for a sign, for anything. But all I heard was this deafening silence. My days felt like I was running on a treadmill, burning all this energy, sweating, getting exhausted, but never actually moving forward. It was a deep, spiritual exhaustion, the kind that settles into your bones, the kind where you start to question everything. God, am I doing something wrong? Is there a lesson here I'm just not getting? It felt like I was pushing against a heavy, locked door, just stuck, completely and utterly stuck. I thought the answer was to work even harder, to pray longer, to force the door open. I thought the answer was out there, somewhere in the future. I never would have imagined that the key was waiting for me back there, in the past, in a place I've known my whole life. And the lock on that door finally started to turn. On one very ordinary Sunday afternoon, an afternoon that changed everything. It started with a feeling. You know that feeling, right? That quiet, intuitive nudge you get when you walk into a room and the air just feels heavy. So there I was at my parents' house. It was that usual Sunday visit. The familiar smell of my mom's cooking was in the air, the soft drone of the TV in the background, the old clock in the hallway ticking away the seconds, just like it had my entire life. I love my parents deeply. But on this particular day, as I sat there on that same old sofa, I couldn't shake this feeling, this heaviness. It wasn't just quiet. It was stagnant. It felt like unseen dust had settled not just on the furniture, but on the energy of the whole house. I looked around at the stacks of old magazines on the coffee table, the mail piled up on the counter, the little trinkets on the shelf that hadn't moved in 20 years. These were the decorations of my childhood, but now they felt different. They felt like anchors, and that's when the thought hit me. It came out of nowhere, this quiet, insistent whisper in my soul. Why does it feel so heavy in here? And it was immediately followed by another, more terrifying thought. A thought that made my heart beat a little faster. I'm trying so hard to unblock my own finances, my own life. But what if the real block isn't with me? What if the spiritual pipeline to my own prosperity is clogged up right here at the source? And in that quiet, cluttered living room, a crazy question started to form in my mind. A question I was almost afraid to even think. But of course, the logical part of my brain, my ego, immediately put up a wall. It screamed, "Are you serious?" Sound familiar? That voice of reason took over, and it was loud. It started listing all the reasons why this was a terrible, ridiculous idea. You think a stack of old magazines is the reason you didn't get that promotion. That's insane. Besides, it continued, you're too busy. You have your own life, your own problems to deal with. You can't start taking on theirs. And then came the biggest excuse, the one that felt the most real. It's their house. It's their life. They are set in their ways, and you know it. You'll just start a fight. You'll make them feel criticized. You'll make yourself miserable, and for what? For some crazy energy, theory you just invented. I took a deep breath and let the voice of reason win. I pushed that intuitive feeling down, deep down. I labeled it as silly, a moment of weird spiritual woo-woo. I told myself to focus on what was real, my job, my bills, my own four walls, and I almost convinced myself. I almost put that intuitive whisper back in its box, locked it tight, and went back to my real, stuck life. I almost walked away. But then another voice, a much older, much wiser voice that I had known my whole life, whispered a reminder. Sometimes the map you're desperately searching for isn't in some new, trendy self-help book. Sometimes it's in the one that's been on your family's nightstand for decades. As all those voices of doubt and logic were swirling in my head, another memory surfaced. It was quiet, but it was clear. A memory from Sunday school years and years ago. A memory of a verse, a commandment that I had heard 1,000 times. So many times that, honestly, it had almost lost its meaning. Honor thy father and thy mother. But this time I heard it differently. My mind didn't just stop at the first part, the command to be respectful. For the first time in my life, I truly heard the second part, the promise. So that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. It wasn't just a rule to be a good kid. It was a divine sequence, a spiritual law like gravity. The honor, the action comes first, and the blessing, the long life, the prosperity in the land God gives you that follows. It hit me like a lightning bolt. I had been praying for the blessing. I had been asking God for that prosperous land. But I had been completely ignoring the first part of his divine instruction. I was asking for the harvest without planting the seed. Suddenly, it wasn't just a rule from childhood anymore. It felt like a key. A spiritual promise that had been waiting for me to take it seriously. And I knew. I had to see if it would unlock the door. So that night, I made a promise, not to my parents, but to God. I wasn't going to try and change their whole house. I wasn't going to start some big, dramatic project that I knew would fail. I would start with one thing. Just one. The next time I went over, I didn't just sit on the sofa. After we ate, I went to the kitchen counter. You know the spot I'm talking about. Every house has one. That one corner that becomes the landing place for everything. Old mail, newspapers, flyers, expired coupons, forgotten keys. It was a mountain of stagnant energy, a physical symbol of procrastination. And with a quiet prayer in my heart, I just started. I put on some gloves, got a trash bag, and I began to sort. One piece of paper at a time. This is trash. This is important. This needs to be filed. I wasn't judgmental. I wasn't critical. I was just serving. It took maybe 15 minutes. But when I was done, when that corner of the counter was clean and clear for the first time in years, I took a step back, and I could breathe. It felt like the whole kitchen took a deep breath with me. And right there, in that small, simple act of service, I felt a shift. A tiny spark, not just in the room, but in me. This was the first step. And if you feel that pull in your own heart to take your own first step, and you want to see where this path of faith and Feng Shui leads, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and walk this path with me. Because as I threw away that first bag of clutter, something inside me felt lighter, hopeful. But I had no idea, absolutely no idea, of the resistance I was about to face. Ever tried to help someone who doesn't want to be helped? It's one of the hardest tests of faith, isn't it? I was feeling so good about that clean counter. I thought it was a clear win. But the next time I came over, my mom saw it and said, "Oh, that's nice that you cleaned, honey, but now I can't find anything." I knew where everything was in my little pile. She wasn't angry. She wasn't yelling. But her words, her energy, it felt like a wall. My good deed suddenly felt like a criticism, a disruption to her peace. And that's when the real enemy showed up. And the enemy was me. It was that hot, impatient voice that flared up inside my head. "See, it's pointless," it whispered. "You're just making things worse. Why are you even bothering with this?" I felt this wave of frustration wash over me. That old, familiar feeling of hitting a brick wall, and I recognized that energy. It was the same frustrated, hopeless energy that I felt when I looked at my own stalled career. It was the energy of a block, the energy of giving up. But this time, something was different. Instead of letting that frustration win, I remembered my promise to God. I excused myself, walked into the other room, and I just took a deep breath. I prayed, a simple, quiet prayer. Not for my mom to change, but for me to change. I prayed for patience. I prayed for a heart of service, not a heart of pride. In that moment, my prayer was my ally. It was my shield against my own worst instincts. And with that prayer settling my spirit, I walked back into the kitchen, smiled, and said, "You're right, Mom. Let's organize it together so it makes sense to you." That small victory, that choice to choose peace over frustration, gave me courage. So I decided to tackle something bigger, a place that had been left untouched for years. I was so close to walking away, so close to quitting. And then I asked my dad if I could help him clear out the old closet at the end of the hall, and inside it, I found the true heart of the entire journey. It was hidden in a dusty box in the back of that closet, something I was about to throw away without a second thought. The closet was filled with old coats, forgotten shoes, the smell of mothballs and time. Feeling a little bold after my small victory in the kitchen, I pulled out an old cardboard box. It was heavy. Inside, beneath some old blankets, was a small, rusty tin box. I pried it open. There was nothing inside but a few old, foreign coins and a single, folded, yellowed piece of paper. "What's all this, Dad?" I asked, maybe a little too dismissively. "Just some old junk. We can probably toss this, right?" My dad, who had been watching me quietly, didn't answer right away. He walked over, and the way he reached for that little tin box, it was with a reverence that stopped me cold. He took it and sat down on a nearby chair, his hands cradling it. "This isn't junk, son," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it in years. "This is everything." He opened the box. These coins, this was the first money I ever earned in this country. I worked for 2 days digging a garden for a man who barely spoke to me. It was back-breaking work. At the end of it, this is what he gave me. It wasn't enough to even buy a real meal. He then carefully unfolded the yellowed paper. It was a page torn from a pocket Bible. Your mother and I, we were so scared then. We had nothing. That night, we bought a loaf of bread with a few other coins we had, and we read this passage together. It's from Psalm 37. The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously. The Lord makes firm the step of the one who delights in him. We prayed over this money, son. We didn't pray for more. We prayed for the strength to be righteous with the little we had. This box, this doesn't hold our poverty. It holds the memory of God's faithfulness. And in that moment, something inside me just broke. The pride, the impatience, the ridiculous, arrogant idea that I was there to fix things, it all shattered. I wasn't looking at a stubborn old man clinging to clutter. I was looking at a giant of faith, a man who had faced real hardship, not my petty career frustrations, and had held onto God's word as his only true treasure. The blocked energy I was so obsessed with clearing, it wasn't in his house. It was in my heart. The judgment, the disrespect, the blindness. I didn't say anything. I just knelt down on the floor in front of him, and for the first time in a long, long time, I truly saw my father. In that sacred silence, I understood what it meant to honor someone. If you've ever felt a moment like that, a moment that completely changed your perspective, please give this video a like. And I have to ask her what's a story or an object from your parents or grandparents that holds immeasurable wealth for you. Please share it in the comments below. As I knelt there on the floor, in the quiet of that dusty hallway, I finally received the reward I had been looking for. But it wasn't at all what I expected. The strange thing about blessings, the truly strange thing, is that they rarely come in the form you ask for. I went to my parents' house looking for a secret to wealth, and what I found in that dusty hallway was peace. A deep, profound peace that settled in my soul. The rest of that day, we didn't just clean. We shared stories. We laughed. The house wasn't just getting tidier, our relationship was getting lighter. The real blocked energy that I had cleared that day wasn't in the closet. It was the years of distance between me and my dad. That feeling, that connection, that was the real reward, or so I thought. A couple of weeks later, I was over at their house again, and I noticed the kitchen faucet had been dripping constantly for months. A classic Feng Shui money drain, right? An annoying little drip, wasting water, wasting money. On a whim, I went to the hardware store, spent $20 on a repair kit, and I fixed it. It was a simple, practical act of service. I didn't think anything of it. The very next day, my phone rang. It was about a huge project proposal I had submitted months ago. A proposal I was sure was dead, one I had completely given up on. They told me the client had suddenly had a change of heart and wanted to move forward. Immediately, coincidence, maybe a lucky break, perhaps, but in my heart I knew what it was. When you honor the source, when you fix the leaks in the very foundation of your life, the flow of blessings is restored. It's not a transaction. It's alignment. This newfound peace, this incredible feeling of being in alignment with God's will, it wasn't just a temporary feeling. It became my shield. It became my compass. And it was time to bring it back into the real world. So how does a profound spiritual experience like that actually change your day-to-day life? It's not a lightning bolt every day. It's much quieter than that, but it changes everything. My Sunday visits were different after that. I stopped seeing them as an obligation on my to-do list, another box to check. Instead, I started seeing them as an opportunity to cultivate blessings. I'd come over and not just ask, "How are you?" but, "Hey, Dad, what's one little thing I can fix for you today?" Sometimes that meant changing a light bulb that was too high for him to reach. Sometimes it meant spending an hour helping my mom sort through old recipes. I stopped trying to fix their house according to my standards and just started to bring love and service into it. And a funny thing happened. As I focused on bringing more peace and order to their home, the source, my own life started to feel more abundant in 1,000 other ways. I had more creative ideas at work. My conversations with friends felt deeper. I felt a sense of purpose that had been missing. It was like by watering the roots, my own branches started to grow stronger and bear fruit long before the money ever came. The old me would have been tapping my foot, looking at my watch, thinking about all the important work I had to get back to. The new me understood that this right here, was the most important work. I felt like I had finally figured it out. I thought I had the key, but it's easy to feel peaceful and aligned when the seas are calm. The ultimate test of this new faith, that was yet to come. Because what happens when a real storm hits? And then the storm hit. About a month later, I got an email. A major client, a huge piece of my income, was pulling out of their contract, effective immediately. The old me, the me from before that Sunday afternoon, would have panicked. My heart would have been pounding in my chest. I would have been up all night, drowning in anxiety, my mind spiraling into worst-case scenarios. I probably would have made a dozen frantic, desperate phone calls, maybe even taken on a bad project out of pure fear of scarcity. That was my old pattern, but as I read that email, I felt the fear, of course. That cold knot formed in my stomach, but this time, something was different. I didn't let the fear take the wheel. I acknowledged it, I felt it, and then I remembered the feeling of peace from my father's living room. I remembered the lesson of his little tin box. I closed my laptop. I walked away from the screen, and I prayed. But it wasn't a prayer of desperation anymore. It wasn't, "God, please fix this." It was a prayer of trust. "God, thank you for this challenge. Please grant me the clarity to see the path you have for me." And in that quiet space of trust, my mind became clear. The panic subsided. I didn't see a catastrophe anymore. I saw an opportunity, a course correction. Because I was calm, I was able to look at my situation strategically. I made a plan. I reached out to people with confidence, not desperation. I actually came out of that situation in a stronger, more stable position than before. I had weathered the storm. And as I navigated that crisis, not with fear, but with a deep, grounded faith, I finally understood the last piece of the puzzle. The ultimate truth that this entire journey had been leading me to. The elixir I knew I had to bring back and share with you. So here it is, the secret, the elixir, the ultimate truth I learned, not in a book, not in a seminar, but on my knees in my parents' dusty closet. For so long I was chasing wealth. I was trying to get it. I was treating God like a vending machine and Feng Shui like a magic trick. I thought if I just did the right things, said the right prayers, put the money frog in the right corner, that blessings would be dispensed to me. I was wrong. The journey taught me that true, lasting prosperity isn't something you get. It's something that flows as a result of who you are. It's an outcome, not a goal. The secret to unblocking your own prosperity is to stop focusing on your own pipes and to go fix the leaks at the source. The source of your life, your parents, your roots. True Feng Shui isn't about moving furniture, it's about moving your heart. It's the physical act of honoring those who gave you life. True wealth isn't about accumulating more for yourself. It's about serving others with a heart of gratitude. When you care for your roots as God commands, with love, with patience, with a servant's heart, you are performing the most powerful act of wealth attraction there is. You are aligning yourself with the divine flow of blessings and prosperity, both spiritual and material, will come to you, not because you chased it, but as a natural, inevitable blessing for a life lived in faith and honor. This journey changed my life, and I truly believe this truth can change yours too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What was the biggest takeaway for you from this story? Let's continue the conversation in the comments below. And if this message resonated with your spirit, please share it with someone you feel needs to hear it today. Our exploration of a life of true abundance, inside and out, is just getting started here. If you want to continue on this path with me, to build a life rich in both faith and fortune, make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on so you won't miss what's next. Thank you for being here. Be blessed.